There is no easy way to talk about this. And there's nothing wrong with talking about it. Well, one thing, and that is not talking. It's understandable. It makes a lot of us uncomfortable. It makes a lot of us tense. And it actually can be quite anxiety provoking when trying to talk to someone who may have attempted suicide, or we're talking to a family member of a person who may have died by suicide. We don't always know what to say. We don't always have the words. We don't always know how to say what needs to be said. Engaging appropriate time when to talk to someone is also anxiety provoking. So it takes time, and I'm here to help you with that. My name is Chasity, and I'm a licensed clinical therapist with the Healthy Bump Club. And today we are going to talk about suicide prevention, suicide awareness, how you can be supportive, and how you can ease into having a conversation with someone who may have attempted suicide, or someone of a family member who may have died by suicide. It's Suicide Prevention Month. So let's talk about how we got here. 47,511 Americans committed suicide in 2019. 1.38 million attempted suicide in 2019. In 2019, the age adjustment of suicide attempts was adjusted to 13.93. 93% of Americans were surveyed whom believe that suicide is preventable. While suicide is widely known as being preventable, sadly, some suicides cannot be prevented. But what we can do is talk about prevention. We all play a role in suicide prevention. Let's talk about IDing risk factors. What are some risk factors that we can pick up on everyday people, clinicians, school teachers, doctors, therapists? What are some things that friends, family members, what are some things that we can pick up on that can help us understand if a person may be at risk? Let's talk about drugs and alcohol use. Is it an increased use? Is it a use that, is it something that they're just beginning? So look for increases in drug use and or alcohol use, or understand risk factors in regards to, is it something new that they are starting? Number one. Let's understand the accessibility to guns, ropes, and knives that may be around the house. These are risk factors. Does the person have a pre-existing mental illness and or psychiatric disorder, such as depression or conduct disorder? Has there been previous suicidal ideations, attempts, any suicidal behaviors that you can think of? Is there a history of loss, trauma, or victimization that a person may have experienced? Are there any external vulnerabilities, such as a family crisis, community crisis? Is anything going on externally in their environment that can put them at risk? Are there sudden feelings of hopelessness, impulsivity? Are there any losses that this person may have experienced, such as death, divorce, any romance loss? And lastly, are there any crises that this person may be going through with family and or with themselves or within their community? This is just a short list. And please understand that this is not an exhaustive list. This is just something to help you understand some basic things to look for when a family member and or friend may be at risk. So we're talking about risk factors. What are some warning signs? Because those things are different. Warning signs are, has this person been making any threats? Have they been leaving suicidal notes around the home? Is there a plan? Is there a method to that plan? And is there access to the method and the plan? Has there been any loss in pleasurable activities? Has someone you love dancing, love crocheting, love playing basketball? Are they all of a sudden no longer interested in things that once brought them pleasure? Are people giving away their most prized possessions? These are warning signs. Is there a sudden change in their behavior with their friends or with their personality? Themes. Is this person becoming, is their drawings or is their writing becoming more themed around death and suicide? Look at the pictures, look at what someone may be writing, and is the theme surrounding that death and or suicide? Again, this is not an exhaustive list. These are warning signs. We talked about risk factors. We've talked about warning signs. We're going to put all of this together. When assessing risk factors and warning signs, and we've taken into consideration culture, let's also take into consideration protective factors. What is this person's strength? How does this person deal with stress? How does this person cope with stress? That's a protective factor that we need to look for. What is this person's religious beliefs? Is there something that they believe in religiously that they can hold on to that can be a protective factor? What is their frustration tolerance? Do they have a positive therapeutic relationship with someone in their church, a therapist? Do they have those types of therapeutic relationships? What are their own personal responsibilities? And lastly, what is this person's social supports? Again, not an exhaustive list, just something to get your mind going. Many times when we are talking about suicide, we hear a lot of self harm, self injurious behavior, self mutilation, and cutting. And when people hear this, they also sometimes correlate suicidal um, suicide with self-injurious behavior, as in someone wanting to commit suicide. And sometimes those things are different. So let's talk about self-injury. Self-injury typically refers to a variety of behaviors in which an individual intentionally inflicts harm on his or her body for purposes not socially recognized or sanctioned and without suicidal intent. So understand some of these words are used interchangeably. You might hear self-injurious behavior, SIB, self-injure, self-injury, self-harm, cutting, self-mutilation. So be on the lookout for some of those types of languages that you may hear people talking about. Forms of self-injury can be cutting, scratching, burning, picking and pulling in the penetration of skin, and pulling fingernails or pulling hair. I just cannot explain enough that this is not an exhaustive list. And self-injurious behaviors come in many forms. The most common and well documented are the ones that I previously just stated. However, there's also a subset of self-injurious behavior that you cannot see physically, and that might be through food, shopping, and or gambling. And this type of self-injurious behavior rarely leaves physical bruises. Again, some people correlate self-injurious behavior with wanting to commit suicide, and that's not always the case. Some people who self-injure